think I'm live. Hello, good day. It is Sunday, the 2nd of January 2022, and I am reading BLISS Afterlife, a story I started writing 15 years ago. I don't know when I wrote, I know that all the beginning chapters are all written in 206 and 207. And then I don't remember when I wrote exactly these pages. Book 1 was finished in 2017, so anytime in between here, but this is earlier part. Bliss has passed away. She was at 95. This is a little while ago, and this is a story about an incarnation or a reincarnation. We are now at chapter 56. Entitled Ben and Faye. Ben is the grandson of Bliss. Ben had woken up quite early to find Faye was already up, and he found her sitting in the kitchen with his mum, Susan. She looked so sweet in her dressing gown, borrowed from Susan. She had a cup of tea in her hand and was eating a piece of toast. "Good morning, ladies. Gosh, I thought I was early. It's barely 7, and here you are both, chatting wide awake." Faye was just telling me about her little incident yesterday. I don't think she has anything to worry about. Faye smiled. She nodded to Ben. "I feel just fine. Woken up by the birds and could hear your mum in the kitchen." Ben smiled back. "But you don't think she should have a check-up or something?" "What do you think, Faye?" Susan looked at her. "I feel absolutely fine. Baby is kicking, and I'm sure it's turning around and round. If anything like this happens again, I shall have it checked out. Deal?" Ben nodded. "Yes, of course. I'm just glad it was just a little faintness. Make sure you eat something. I know what you're like." "Yes, darling, I know. But I woke up really hungry. This is my 2nd round of toast." She waved a piece of toast, and Ben suddenly felt hungry too. He got himself a couple of slices and put them in the toaster. "When are you off, Mum?" "Actually, very soon. I get myself ready now. Just wanted a cup of tea first, and we got chatting. In fact, I'm going now." Ben pulled Phil to her feet. "Come on, let's have a bath together," he said. "I love my mum's big bath." He has always been a keen bather. He laughed at the memories of his mum equipped with all sorts of things like books, incense, candles, sometimes a snack, closing the bathroom door and spending ages in there. In fact, his dad had a downstairs shower and bathroom put in their old family home when he was 5. He had loved that house. It was quite run down but huge, and his dad was forever doing stuff when he wasn't making music. He loved having a bath with Faye. "Yes, let's. I will soon get too big for such things." She smiled, patting her belly. "Come on then, quickly now." She patted his bum and pushed him up the stairs. She did love his good ideas. "I shall make it nice and cozy. Bring your music. I get us another tea." She turned around to get back into the kitchen and heard him run the bath. Chapter 57. Steve meets Faye. Steve is the ex-husband of Susan, and he is the father of Ben. Steve had stopped off at a little cafe on the road to London and thought he'd better get going again. He had aimed for 10, but it was almost 10:30 now. He put his foot down and was soon approaching London. His mind was wandering again to Silvana. Funny how he thought of her all the time. What the hell was he thinking about before he had met her? He knew he had become quite happy with his own company. Time just ran through his hands when he was writing music, and he had got himself new equipment. It took him some time to get to grips with the new technology, but he absolutely loved playing around with the sounds. He had not missed a woman in his life. He did not find himself very lucky in love. Not that he hadn't had a chance here and there, but women always scared him a bit. He had been besotted with Susan when they met, but she was very much her own person, and his first affair only happened because the flirting just got a bit too much, and he'd had too much to drink at the time. He had no idea why he kept falling into that same trap. He had loved being a dad to Ben. Susan was always so busy. His own mother was always there for his dad. Actually, every wish of his was her command. Well, in Indian families this was not so unusual, he thought. Oh my God, I can't believe I just thought that. His parents were constant conversation during their marriage, and Susan couldn't get incensed how he pandered to his mother, as she called it, but at the same time expected her to pander to him, and she had accused him quite a few times in the early part of their marriage that he was just like his dad, a patronizing, boring old fart. He laughed. Actually, she had taught him so much about partnership. He had just not been ready. He felt in those days he was certainly trying to prove himself. He fell so short of his father's expectations of him. He had never gone back to India after he had come to England in his teens to go to college and study. He finished his A-levels, but he never went to university. He spent most of his time playing his guitar, and the idea of studying economics, something his dad highly recommended, was so not happening. The whole palaver when Susan got pregnant, his parents were outraged. Steve had felt himself so much more English than Indian. He went to an international school when he was in India, and in many ways he never really understood his parents. He had taken on all sorts of jobs, so they got by once Ben was born. His dad thought he was wasting his life, could have been something, with a proper profession. When his career and band took off, he always felt his father was disappointed with him, despite his growing success. Oh God, why am I thinking of the dark side, he thought. Unbelievable how his mind always managed to stray to something he would much rather forget. And could forget, for God's sake. That was almost 40 years ago, and he'd done a lot of work on this stuff. He wasn't going to go there, and was glad for the increasing traffic. He was getting closer. He looked forward to seeing Ben. How long has it been? They missed each other twice in the last couple of years. He couldn't believe they had let it go so long. He really had to make sure this was not going to happen again. He loved the idea of his son being settled and happy in a relationship. Here we are. He parked his car. Susan had made the house look really nice. He had never lived here, and he was glad that they could talk to each other now without arguing constantly. He knew that he had hurt Susan very badly, and he really hoped she was happy and not bitter about all the stuff in the past. He now knew that he was a better man for all the arguments they'd had. He had been keen to patch it up when she caught him out the last time. So stupid. He didn't even particularly like the girl. Susan had been totally cold, very resolute. Ah, these bloody memories. He had a quick look in the mirror and got the flowers he had bought when he had a coffee. Beautiful roses, orange and lovely smelling. He had seen them and thought it would be nice to give Faye some flowers as a welcome. He rang the bell. Ben opened the door. Oh, Dad, so good to see you. He threw his arms around his dad. Steve was a tiny bit taller than his son, but both were over 6 foot. Faye appeared in the hall, and he thought how absolutely beautiful she was, slightly exotic, tall and slim, in a lovely loose dress which swished around her legs. Well, what a beautiful smile. I'm glad I bought these now. Fitting roses for a rose. He looked at her, handing her the roses, and took her hand. I'm so glad to finally meet you, Faye. Faye, is it? I've heard, yes it is, I've heard a lot about you, Steve. She thought he looked lovely. A little bit like an older version of Ben, only very slightly darker face and slightly greying temples. And he had blue eyes. Really blue eyes. That was strange. Ben had brown eyes. You have lovely blue eyes. She couldn't believe she just said that. Steve laughed out loud, and so did Ben. He never really noticed anymore, but now he saw how lovely and blue his dad's eyes were. Indeed, a little unusual. I know, must have been some throwback somewhere in my ancestry. No one else in my family has blue eyes, all brown. Yes, same here, Faye laughed. We Chinese don't have blue eyes really, and I didn't know you have this in India. Well, you find it in certain parts. Don't get me going. My mother looked into it all, but we could never find who might have actually been responsible for my eye color. He took her arm. It gets very boring, and I just take it for granted all my life. So thank you, if you like them. I'm glad and happy that I still have good eyesight, whatever the color. They laughed, and Steve pulled them both into the large kitchen. Dad, I'm so glad you came. Before we talk about anything else, I wanted to tell you that you're going to be a granddad." Ben pulled Faye into his arms. They laughed at Steve's surprised face. "This is absolutely fantastic news. I'm so happy for you." "Oh yes, now I can see a little bump." "Well, am I ready for being a granddad?" "You better be, Dad." "Fantastic. I hope you mean it." "Too late now. You might play it in a band, but nowadays I think you will find quite a few granddads doing that. It seems to get more difficult to get you old fogies off the stage." Ben looked at his dad. He did look well. In fact, he looked better than he had the last time he had seen him. And he was all smiles. That was always good with his dad. He was so moody sometimes when Ben was little, and often seemed displeased for some reason or another with him. It was good to see him again. He felt himself so much more grown up now, and his dad was a lovely guy, really. Steve took them both into his arms. "Well, congratulations, my dear children." Steve felt himself welling up. He suddenly felt incredibly lucky and blessed. Despite all the crappy behavior he had shown and felt guilty about, Ben was happy to be a dad himself. It felt incredible to him. He felt suddenly really moved, knowing his little grandchild was right there, being made to be a big part of his future. He was going to make sure of that. Wherever they were going to live, he would be part of that little one's life. He was surprised how sure he felt about that suddenly. He had never given grandchildren a thought. Only recently, Savannah surprised him by saying she couldn't wait for her daughter to have a baby. Although she quickly said that Poppy was still a little young with 25, but she found children fascinating and loved working with them at her circles. They all congregated in the kitchen. Talking seemed very easy. They had a lot to catch up on, and he felt happy. Things are good, he thought. Chapter 58. Tony has a date. Tony is the other grandson of Bliss. Tony had driven home after a good night's sleep at the refuge. He wondered how Ben and Uncle Steve would get on. Actually, he hadn't called him Uncle since they got drunk together at a gig. Tony went to his gigs years ago. How long had they not seen each other? He couldn't even remember. Maybe he had seen Steve more recently than Ben, actually. Anyway, he thought the last few years seemed to have whizzed by. He heard a noise and stopped. Melanie had stepped out of her door just as he was taking the last few stairs to his own front door. "Hello," she smiled. "Hi, Melanie. Sorry, I was deep in thought. How are you?" "Really well, Tony. Actually, I wanted to ask you if you fancied sharing dinner with me. Since you found my necklace, for which I'm really grateful, I thought it would be nice to have a chat." She really did have the sweetest smile, he thought. "Wow, that would be great. I've just come back from London. My cousin and his new big love from China are at my mum's place. We had a family get-together. She's lovely, expecting a baby in a few months. They're so happy." He found himself bubbling along. What was the matter with him? "Shut up, Tony," he thought. "That's lovely. Well, you can tell me all about it. I made a lasagna. Is that okay?" "Yeah, great." He pulled his shoulders up. "I love lasagna. When shall I come? I want to drop this off upstairs and have a shower. Is that okay?" "Yes, no problem. I've made it but not put it in the oven yet, in case I didn't see you. Probably I would have given it to friends of mine who are coming tomorrow." "Oh, I don't want to deprive your friends of a lasagna," Tony said. "Don't worry about that. I made it with you in mind." She smiled again, and he could feel himself getting hot. "Fantastic, lovely, yes, good. Shall we say, 6-ish? "Yes, that sounds good to me. If you have a bottle of vino handy, bring it." She laughed. "Will do," he said. He did have at least one bottle of red. "See you later." He took 2 steps at a time to get to his flat. Once he closed the door, he noticed that he had been innately grinning the whole time, and still now he looked in the mirror, grinned at his grinning face, and gave himself the thumbs up. "Whoa, I have ages yet. Shower first," he thought, already taking his shirt off. Lasagna. Lasagna always made me think of Omi. She used to make such great lasagnas. Ever since he had found Melanie's necklace, he had been thinking of his Omi. All sorts of stuff was going through his head, driving down here from London. Memories over memories. He even barely remembered how he got here. He smiled again. It was nice to think of Omi, She was always a really good laugh, and he was really glad he could share these memories with Ben. They had been like brothers to Omi, offsprings of her beloved daughters. Thanks, Omi, he thought, just noticing a bird had projectile pooped on his balcony window, which made him laugh. It had always been an in-joke that Omi was connected with all sorts of bird poo stories. He couldn't even remember why. But whenever his car screen or Ben's Velux window at his old flat was covered in bird poo, they remembered their Omi. He had asked his mother about that, funny associations, but then he felt in a funny mood and he thanked Omi for the poo on the balcony. He stepped into the shower and not before switching on some of Steve's tunes, to which he happily hummed along. So that was chapter 58, and the next chapter I shall read is 59, which will be about bliss again. Have a lovely Sunday. Bye bye.